Mariana always knew that something was wrong with her family. Growing up with her older brother, Enrique, she felt the difference in treatment firsthand. He was the brilliant son, the natural heir, the pride of his parents. She, on the other hand, was always the shadow, treated with cold indifference, as if she were there out of obligation. But it was only when her father passed away that the truth began to emerge. In the will, Enrique got everything: the house, the assets, the savings. Mariana received nothing. Not a mention, not a symbolic object. Just silence. At first, she tried to convince herself that it was just more evidence of her parents' blatant favoritism, but something didn't make sense. How could a legitimate daughter simply be erased from a will without explanation? Searching for answers, Mariana went through her father's old documents and found a disturbing inconsistency. Her birth certificate seemed to have been altered. The date, the names of her parents, even the notary's signature, all showed signs of fraud. When she confronted Enrique about it, he laughed, not even bothering to hide his contempt. "You were never a real daughter. You were always a lie that our father had to maintain." Mariana felt the ground disappear. Her blood ran cold, her breath became shallow, and for a moment, the world around her seemed to go silent. "What do you mean by that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Enrique crossed his arms, impatient. "Do you really want to? No. You're not our sister. Our father hid that our whole life. You were the result of an affair, and for some reason, he decided to raise you. But deep down, you were never part of the family. That's why you didn't get anything." The contempt in his voice hurt more than any slap. Mariana tried to protest, but he just smirked. "Do you think I'm lying? Then take a look at this old closet in his room. If you dare." With her heart racing, Mariana followed the instructions, her hands sweating as she rummaged through dusty boxes. At the bottom of a drawer, she found a stack of letters yellowed with age. Her eyes scanned the handwritten lines, each word sinking in like a sharp blade. They were letters from her mother, but not from the woman who raised her. Her biological mother, who begged for news, begged for a chance to see her, to explain everything. The letters were never answered. They were never even opened. The truth hit her like a punch in the gut. Mariana had been ripped from her real family and raised under a cruel lie. The shock was still reverberating through Mariana's body when one of the letters slipped from her hands and fell open on the floor. Her eyes fell on a detail that made her stomach turn. Her biological mother had mentioned another name. Not Mariana, but Luciana. Her real name. It was as if the identity she had carried all her life had been ripped away from her. Feeling dizzy, she picked up another letter, this time written by a man, her biological father. He mentioned a desperate desire to find her, saying he had never known she had been taken. Her words in her last letter were clear: "If you ever find out the truth, know that we never gave up on you." The world spun around her when a thought flashed through her mind like a lightning bolt. If her biological parents were looking for her, why had they never found her? And why had her adoptive parents hidden her so well? Mariana needed answers, and the only one who could provide them was her adoptive father, but he was dead. That left only her mother. With the letters in her hands and her heart hammering in her chest, Mariana went to her, ready to extract the truth, but she found only evasions. "I did what was best for you," her mother murmured, without looking her in the eye. But Mariana didn't want excuses. She wanted the truth. Mariana took a deep breath, trying to contain the anger that was rising inside her. "Better for me," she repeated, her voice shaking. "You ripped me away from my family and raised me on a lie. How can that be what's best for me?" Her adoptive mother sighed, as if she was tired of carrying that secret. "If your father knew I was telling you this, he would be furious. But now he's gone, and I think you have the right to know." Mariana crossed her arms, waiting. "You weren't the result of an affair, Mariana, or rather, Luciana. You were taken from your family. When you were born, your biological mother was involved with a married man. You're real. Father never knew you existed, and his wife, well, she wanted you to disappear." Mariana's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear the rest. "Oh my God," she whispered, feeling her stomach churn. "So what did you do? Kidnap me?" Her mother hesitated before answering. "Not exactly. Your adoptive father knew this woman, the betrayed wife. She wanted you gone, but she didn't have the courage to do anything drastic. So, your father saw an opportunity. He always wanted a daughter and made a deal with her. You were registered as our daughter, and no one ever spoke of it again. Mariana felt a shiver run down her spine. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't abandonment. She had been erased from her own history for convenience. The truth weighed on Mariana like a block of concrete. Everything she believed about herself crumbled in the face of this brutal revelation. But a question burned in her mind. What about my real family? My biological father? Did he never know about me? Her mother lowered her head, avoiding her gaze. No. He never had that chance. Your biological mother tried to find you for years, but no one would let her get close. Your father, he probably doesn't even know you exist. The answer made something inside Mariana snap. All her life, she had felt unwanted, invisible, unaware that the truth was even crueler. She had been robbed of a life that should have been hers. But if there was one thing Mariana would not do, it was to accept this lie any longer. With the letters in hand, she decided to find her true origins. She spent sleepless nights searching the internet for any clues about her biological father. Until a name came up, Renato Vasconcelos. A discreet businessman, a widower, who lived in the interior of the state. The same name that appeared repeatedly in her biological mother's letters. The man who never knew of her existence. Mariana felt the weight of the decision she had to make. She could go on with her life as if nothing had happened or knock on the door of a man who had no idea he had a daughter. The train shook gently as Mariana watched the landscape pass by the window. After days of indecision, she finally gathered her courage and set off towards the city where Renato Vasconcelos lived. Her heart was heavy with fear and anxiety. How would he react? Would he accept her or reject her? What if he already had another family, other children? These questions hammered at her mind relentlessly. But one thing was certain: she could not live with this doubt forever. When she arrived at the small town, she found the address easily. A large but discreet house surrounded by a well-kept garden. Her stomach turned when she rang the doorbell. A few seconds passed before the door opened, revealing a man with gray hair and a serious look. He studied her curiously before asking, "Can I help you?" Mariana felt a lump in her throat, but forced the words out. "My name is Mariana, but I think my real name is Luciana. And I think you're my father." Renato's face hardened. He blinked a few times, trying to process what he had just heard. "What?" His voice was hesitant, as if he wasn't sure he had heard correctly. Mariana felt her palms sweat, but she couldn't back down now. "My biological mother's name was Carolina. She wrote you these letters." She held up the stack of old envelopes she had brought with her. "She never got a reply because they hid me from you." Renato took the letters with shaking hands. His eyes skimmed over the first few lines, and as he read, his face paled. A heavy silence took over the moment. Renato closed his eyes and took a deep breath before looking at her again. "My God." His voice broke. "I never knew." He brought his hand to his mouth, his eyes watering. "I never knew she had a son, or rather, a daughter." Mariana felt a tightness in her chest. For the first time, she didn't see indifference or rejection. She saw a man devastated by a past he didn't even know about. "Are you sure about that?" he asked, as if he still had hoped that it was a mistake. Mariana nodded. "I was registered under another name. Raised by another family. They hid everything from you." Renato ran his hand over his face, trying to contain the flood of emotions that invaded him. He reread parts of the letters, as if seeking confirmation that was already clear. Mariana didn't need to say anything else. He saw the truth before him. "They took you away from me," he murmured, his voice full of pain. "Carolina tried to tell me, tried to look for me, but I never knew." The silence between the two was broken only by the sound of Renato's heavy breathing. Mariana felt a mix of relief and anguish. Finally, someone was on her side. But what would they do now? After a few minutes, Renato composed himself. His eyes now had a determined gleam. "You deserve to know everything. If you want, I can tell you what happened back then. Who those people were. And if you want, we can do a DNA test. To be sure." Mariana nodded, but deep down, she already knew the answer. What worried her most now was another question. If Renato never knew of her existence, then who made her disappear? Who planned everything so that she would be erased from his own history? Renato wasted no time. He called a lab and scheduled the test for the next day. But while they waited for the results, Mariana couldn't get one crucial question out of her head: who was behind it all? She went home and decided to go through more documents, searching through everything she could find. And it was then that, in the back of a drawer in her adoptive father's office, she found a folder hidden among old papers. Inside were strange records, copies of birth certificates, receipts for cash donations, even a letter of renunciation of parental rights signed with a name she had never seen before: Camila Vasconcelos. Mariana's eyes widened. Vasconcelos. The same last name as Renato. With her heart racing, she called him immediately. "Renato, I need to ask you something. Did you know someone named Camila Vasconcelos?" The silence on the other end of the line lasted for long seconds. "Yes," he finally said, his voice thick with tension. "She was my wife." Mariana felt a chill run down her spine. "I think I found something, and it might be proof that she was the one who took me away from you." Renato felt a crushing weight on his chest when he heard that name after so many years. Camila. His late wife. The woman he had shared a life with and who had apparently kept the biggest secret of all from him. "What did you find, Mariana?" His voice was tense. Mariana swallowed hard. "A letter. It looks like a document where someone renounces parental rights. And the name signing it is Camila Vasconcelos." On the other end of the line, Renato was silent. Mariana felt his breathing quicken before he finally answered, "That changes everything." The next day, Renato drove to Mariana's house. He needed to see the document with his own eyes. As soon as he read Camila's signature, a tremor ran through his body. She knew from the beginning. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to control his rising anger. Camila couldn't have children. She always wanted a child, but after years of failed attempts, she became obsessed with the idea of adoption. "I never understood why she rejected the legal processes. Now I know why." Mariana felt her stomach turn. "She made a dirty deal to erase me from her life." Renato ran his hands through his hair, trying to process everything. "She deceived me for years. She made me believe that our life was complete, that we didn't need anything else, while she hid the biggest lie of all from me." Mariana felt a lump in her throat. "She didn't just hide the truth from you. She made sure my mother never had a chance. Those letters I found. Carolina begged to see me, but no one ever answered. Camila must have intercepted everything." Renato's fury was visible. His face hardened, his jaw clenched. "I loved this woman, Mariana. I spent years by her side without suspecting a thing." He laughed bitterly. "And now I discover that she destroyed the only thing that truly mattered." Mariana watched Renato take a deep breath, struggling to maintain his composure. "What now?" she asked. "What do we do with this?" Renato stared at the papers on the table, as if the answer lay there. "I can't change the past. But I can make sure her name doesn't erase anything else. If there's anything I can do for you now, Mariana, it's give you back what was taken from you." He picked up the phone and started making calls. Within minutes, he had scheduled a meeting with a lawyer. "We'll get this straightened out on paper. And then I want the world to know what happened. I won't let her story erase yours." The following days were a whirlwind of bureaucracy and revelations. The DNA test confirmed the obvious: Mariana was Renato's biological daughter. With this in hand, he wasted no time. He filed a legal request to correct her birth certificate, re-establishing her true identity. But the biggest twist came when news of the case leaked to the local press. Newspapers and websites began reporting on Mariana's story: a child ripped from her mother, deceived by her own surname. Camila Vasconcelos' name, once respected, was now tarnished by a posthumous scandal. The impact was immediate. Old family friends began to comment, and distant relatives who had idolized Camila now saw the truth. People who had previously despised Mariana for her rebelliousness began to see her in a different light. But the biggest surprise came on the day of the final hearing, when an unknown man approached her as she left the courtroom. "Luciana?" The name echoed in her chest. The man, with a hesitant look, seemed to be searching for something in her. "I'm your brother." The air escaped Mariana's lungs. "Brother?" He nodded. "I've been looking for you for years. Our mother never gave up on you. And neither have I." Mariana stood frozen, staring at the man who claimed to be her brother. His eyes had the same shade as hers, and there was something familiar in his expression. "You looked for me?" Her voice came out almost as a whisper. The man nodded, visibly moved. "My mother never got over her loss. I grew up hearing about you, seeing the letters she sent that were never answered. When I got older, I started looking for you on my own, but you never appeared in any records, until now." Mariana felt tears well up in her eyes. For so long, she thought she was alone, that no one wanted to know about her. But there he was, living proof that her family never gave up. Renato watched the scene in silence, taking it all in. He turned to the lawyer, who was leaving the courtroom. "Is the case closed?" he asked. The man nodded. "Yes. Officially, her name has gone back to Luciana Vasconcelos." Mariana looked.